His Excellency the Governor, Mr. John Duncan, OBE, Governor of the Virgin Islands, Dr. the Honorable Orlando Smith, OBE, Premier of the Virgin Islands, Dr. the Honorable Kedrick Pickering, Deputy Premier of the Virgin Islands and Minister of Natural Resources and Labor, Honorable Cora Richardson Hodge, Minister of Home Affairs and Gender, Anguilla, Honorable Claude Hogan, Minister of Agriculture and Environment, Montserrat, Mr. Eden Alistair Edwards, Permanent Secretary, Department of Agriculture, St. Kitts and Nevis, Sir Richard Branson, OBE, founder of Virgin Group and Virgin Unite, Mr. Alan Gaboshian, Head of Caribbean, Central America, Mexico Department of the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, Dr. Asha Singh, Head of Oceans Governance for the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, Ms. Pamela Juven, Strategic Initiatives and Partnerships Manager, Virgin Unite and other members of Virgin Unite, Mr. Chris Bennett, Managing Director of the Caribbean Council, and other members of the Caribbean Council, officers from various OECS member states and members of the Commission, representatives of the United Nations Environment Program, business, innovation, and private sector partners, members of the scientific, academic, and research communities of the Caribbean region and the United Kingdom, members of the media, delegates. I welcome you to the Regional Conference on Sargassum, which is co-hosted by the Government of the Virgin Islands and Virgin Unite in partnership with the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, the Caribbean Council, and the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States. So at this time, I would like to invite His Excellency the Governor to make his remarks.
Premier, Deputy Premier, Sir Richard, ministers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. And a very warm welcome to the Virgin Islands and to a particularly beautiful part of the Virgin Islands. About a year ago, after a cabinet which I chair, the Deputy Premier and I, Dr. Pickering, were discussing what to do about the Sargassum issue. And we came to the conclusion that we needed to bring people together to discuss what we could do to meet the upsurge in Sargassum that has dominated this region. So my heartfelt congratulations to Sir Richard, to the BVI government, to Virgin Unite, to the Caribbean Council, the OECS and the FCO for organizing the next 2 days' events, but also to all of you, experts in your own fields, coming together over the next 2 days to have a serious look at this issue. Decision makers need your expert advice and opinion. I'm always struck by what Ronald Reagan said, although I think it's in an interview that I heard rather than a written speech because I can't find it on Google, and that's the authority on all things, as we know. As I recall it, he said, the first thing to realize when you assume senior public office is that you don't know, and find people who might know and seek their advice. For decision makers at the beginning of the 21st century, it's equally important to recognize, firstly, that the world is very complex. Secondly, there are no easy answers. For most of the 20th century, many people believed that there were simple answers. Ideology, Marxism, and others set out the code of life and politics. One simply had to follow it. Although Edward Lawrence at MIT is credited with the discovery of chaos theory in the 1960s, even today, 20 years into the 21st century, many people still believe in simple solutions. Indeed, they demand them of their political leaders. By any yardstick, this must be unwise, both for the leaders and for the led. It is not surprising that the past 20 years have been characterized by a resurgence in populism. We see this on the press, on the TV every day. And attempts to blame, quote, the other, unquote, for today's problem, whether it be migrants, ethnically different groups in our own societies, or those of a different faith. It is worth remembering the prescient words of Nelson Mandela, shortly after he left prison, when he said, "The truth is, we are not free. We have merely achieved the freedom to be free, the right not to be oppressed. To be free is not merely to cast off one's chains, it is to live in a way that respects and enhances the freedom of others." Today's world is interconnected in ways we could never have dreamed of. More people belong to Facebook than comprised the entire world population in 1750. It's an interesting date because it is the dawn of the Enlightenment, that upsurge in knowledge and understanding of the 18th century. In the 21st century, Wikipedia, Google, and the internet give access to knowledge and information in an instant to billions of people. Sadly, that huge access to knowledge has not led necessarily to greater understanding. Be that in economics, socially, or environmentally, we all depend on each other. That the world economy, which delivers the goods we use every day, the clothes that we are wearing, are due to a vast network of interconnectivity across the globe. In the field of the environment, which you will be looking at over the next 2 days, we have, at long last, made some progress at last year's COP21 in Paris, and all credit to those who attended that meeting. But even here, the search for simple solutions will all too often bedevil discussion and progress. On my office wall in Road Town is a print of Tortola from 1827. There are only 3 in existence. What is striking about that photograph, about that print, is that there are very few houses. One would expect that. But more striking still is that Tortola is covered in pasture land. The wooded slopes we see today did not exist 150 years ago. In the United Kingdom, in the 19th century, Beatrix Potter, better known today for her children's stories, started a movement which we know in the United Kingdom as the National Trust, an effort to preserve what many see as the most beautiful parts of the British countryside. But my point here is, and as someone whose ancestors were driven from their farms as part of the Highland clearances to make way for sheep farming, I am all too aware personally and professionally that the landscapes we see today are in large part the direct result of human intervention. So where does this leave us with Sargassum? Although it is a new phenomenon for us in the BVI and the region, certainly in the quantities that we have seen over the past 12 months, seaweed infections are not a new problem. When I'm not in the BVI, I live in northwest France, where people have been harvesting seaweed for more than 100 years. Firstly, as a fertilizer, and today for pharmaceutical products. It's a thriving but small industry. Although we have much higher tides in Brittany, 7 meters compared to a couple of feet in BVI, toxic seaweed has been increasingly a problem. Some say it is because of industrialized farming. Certainly, we should take action to prevent the bleed-off of nitrates into the sea. That stands without saying. But the older residents will tell you that the affected beaches had the same problem nearly 80-plus years ago, before industrialized farming, or the move, more importantly, to tourism, which was so predominant today. I'm very pleased to see a number of you in this audience have studied these issues beyond the Caribbean, and you're bringing your expertise to the discussions today. So in conclusion, firstly, I think it is very important to recognize the importance of the work that you are doing and will be doing over the next 2 days, that decision makers across the Caribbean are anxious to learn your views. Secondly, I hope you can avoid conclusions that will simply encourage some to lament that it is someone else's fault and lose sight of the concrete action that we need ourselves to take as leaders in the area, and in importance in achieving balance and spreading expertise. Finding a solution to the world's challenges are complex, and it is not a simple answer. So again, I wish you a very, very warm welcome, and I wish you a very productive 2 days discussion, and I look forward to learning your conclusions at the end of the 2 days. Thank you very much.
Your Excellency, Governor John S. Duncan, Deputy Premier Minister for Natural Resources and Labor, Dr. Honorable Kedrick Pickering, founder of Virgin Unite, Sir Richard Branson, distinguished colleagues, good morning. It gives me great pleasure to welcome my colleague ministers and their delegations from the member states of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States and the regional and international partners to a beautiful Virgin Islands for the Sargassum Conference. I express our gratitude to Sir Richard Branson for partnering with the government of the Virgin Islands, specifically the Ministry of Natural Resources and Labor, to convene this regional meeting that will address our collective responses to the challenges and opportunities brought about by the Sargassum seaweed. This meeting will build on the collective actions and expertise of many countries that are represented here. It is a product of the collaboration and very strong alliance between our government, Virgin United, the Foreign Cobalt Office, the Caribbean Council, and the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States. The Virgin Islands, like so many of our sister territories and countries within the region, have had to respond and adapt to the overabundance of sargassum along our coastlines, beaches, ports, and other areas of economic and recreational importance. Our collective economic well-being has been impacted by the overabundance of the seaweed on tourism, fisheries, and our transportation sectors. Our coastal residents and their communities have been at the front line of the Sargassum events witnessed over the last few years. They have displayed great resilience and have sprung into action in partnership with government and the civil sector to clean our beaches and find innovative means of addressing the presence of the seaweed. My government has partnered with community organizations, resorts, and regional bodies to mitigate the impacts on our tourism product and the well-being of our communities. We have learned from our collective experience. During this learning period, we have forged a strong partnership that we intend to build upon to further address future instances where the seaweed may again clog our coastlines. It is clear, however, that any action taken by government, community organizations, and private sector in moving forward should be founded on the best information available. This is to ensure that we balance the benefits of the sargassum within their natural environment while minimizing the adverse impacts. This conference provides a forum to engage leading scientists from within the region, development partners from the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, and the United States Environmental Program, representing not only the Cartagena Convention, but the Abidjan Convention as well. At this time, I especially highlight the presence of Mr. Abraham Grassessi, United States Environment Program representative from the Ivory Coast, who will add the experience gained on the management of sargassum along the West African coastlines, and highlight the various actions that their countries are employing to address similar challenges and opportunities. This conference will harness the business expertise and acumen in harvesting seaweed within the United Kingdom's context. We therefore anticipate that the outputs of this conference will provide multiple stakeholders at the local, regional, national, and international levels a roadmap to rationalize our collective actions. This meeting should inform the framework for greater collaboration that will lead to a better understanding of the driving forces that are creating the observable changes in the environment. Beyond that, we must jointly find solutions that reduce the adverse impacts that sargassum poses to our economies. Therefore, we look to this conference to inform the concrete and practical actions that will inform the manner in which the public and private can create greater synergy. We especially look to our regional and international partners to facilitate the acquisition of the technical, human, and financial resources to improve scientific knowledge and understanding while fostering greater dialogue, whether it may be at the community or national levels. We must find the right balance of actions that will ensure that the positive benefits derived from the free-floating mats of sargassum in the ocean do not at the same time threaten our livelihoods and well-being. I look to this conference to build on similar ones with one caveat. We have an opportunity to forge an improved framework for action to better coordinate and integrate actions by the public and private sectors. Let us capitalize on the partnership we have forged between the conference's partners to demonstrate a resolve that we can jointly tackle this environmental challenge while demonstrating that we can harness benefits and find solutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, all of you, for being here today. The last time a number of us gathered on this rather beautiful island, some wonderful outcomes came from it. There was the 10-island Clean Energy Pledge, where some of the biggest islands in the Caribbean made that pledge and are working very hard towards fulfilling it. There was the banning and slaughter of both rays and sharks in many Caribbean islands, including the British Virgin Islands, and laws have been passed, and I think it's been a wonderful step in the right direction. I love the BVI, and our family are very proud to have had it as our home for over 35 years. However, in the last 3 years, I've noticed, as has everybody, the alarming levels of sargassum being deposited on our coastal shores. And our eldest community members say these are the highest levels in living memory. We know that in large quantities, the seaweed deposits have very adverse effects on turtles, particularly baby turtles, and other marine species, and obviously they have a big negative impact on tourism. Dr. Pickering and I often discuss the challenges the BVI is facing, both on an economic and environmental level, always with the aim of brainstorming potential solutions where we may be able to collaborate. And during one of these conversations, the idea for a workshop was born. Simultaneously, Dr. Orlando Smith and our Governor, John Duncan, were having similar discussions together about the need to bring together the world's experts. Great minds think alike, and the conference was born. We have invited each of you here today to help access the problem, to find solutions that will preserve the natural environment, hopefully to work out ways to stop sargassum even reaching our shores, and to explore the potential of harnessing the economic benefits of that sargassum that we hopefully pick up at sea. As a business leader, I'm particularly aware of the link between conservation, economic empowerment, and entrepreneurial solutions. At Virgin Unite, we believe entrepreneurial solutions have a large role to play in restoring the Caribbean environment and growing the economy. In Jamaica, we built the the Branson Center of Entrepreneurship, and Rachel, one of the fantastic speakers you'll hear from today, helped us build the initiative while she was working for Virgin Holidays. And today, the center fosters a generation of brilliant entrepreneurs, many of whom see the link between a healthy environment and their growing business. And last week, we announced a similar initiative here in the BVI. Hosting this conference is a wonderful opportunity to partner with like-minded individuals such as yourselves, policymakers, experts, researchers, entrepreneurs, to explore ways that we can collectively embrace good stewardship of this beautiful island we call Earth. And I very much look forward to the outcomes of the workshop and to hearing about the collaborative strategies and concrete actions we can undertake together to address the challenges presented by sargassum. And hopefully we can spread the word to other countries as well and help them as well. Thank you very much. Cheers.
I wish to recognize the presence of His Excellency the Governor, our Honorable Premier, Sir Richard, all my ministerial colleagues from the Caribbean, and all you distinguished people here this morning. Thank you all for coming, and a very pleasant good morning to all of you. I think it was Robert Kennedy who said that some people see things as they are and wonder why. And some people dream of things that never were and wonder why not. And during the height of the sargassum problem last year, you could well imagine that we were inundated with 1,000,001 questions about what are we going to do. And I remember in one of our caucus discussions, the Premier said to me, have I thought of a budget to be able to clean up the Sargassum seaweed? And I said to him, well, Premier, one can't present a budget unless we first understand the nature of the problem, because all of the information available to us at that point in time indicated that nobody understood the nature of the problem, how long it was going to be around, what we could do about it, and what the future really holds. And in a subsequent discussion in the cabinet, the governor and I was having a discussion about similar ideas, and he said to me, why doesn't the BVI do something and demonstrate some leadership in this arena? So Richard and I have discussions on a regular basis about the environment. Amongst the things that we're working on a lobster conservation program for the BVI. And during that, one of those interactions, we brainstormed a little bit about the Sargassum, because if you had come in just this area right here at the height of the Sargassum, you'd want to believe that it was another island forming out there. That was the nature of the problem here in the BVI. But I also remember traveling back home from a conference in Aruba last year. And the flight took us from Aruba through Santo Domingo, St. Martin. And when we were coming into Santo Domingo, I said to my secretary who was traveling with me, that's an oil slick. Because as far as your eyes could see, there was this long stretch of something brown in the water. And as we got closer to the airport, she said to me, no, that's the Sargassum. And on the flight from Santo Domingo to St. Martin, a similar experience. I swear there was a major oil spill surrounding St. Martin, and then flying from St. Martin to the BVI, you again was faced with a similar issue. Within the context of the BVI, when we were really at the peak of our problem, I remember, of course, being the minister responsible for the subject, you know, the daggers are pointed at you and everybody wants a solution to the problem. One of the things that stand out in my mind was a lady in one of the communities called Seacoast Bay. It's an enclosed harbor where once the Sargassum seaweed gets in there, it's accumulate and it starts to decay. If you know what the smell is like, you could well imagine. She said to me, you know, Dr. Pickering, this situation is so bad that no matter how you close your house, your clothes have the smell of Sargassum. And you could well imagine what that means on a daily basis for individuals, that your house is not only smelling of this noxious scent, but then you can't even find clothes to put on. And that is the impact of the Sargassum, that it is something that not only affects us on a regional level and internationally, but it affects daily human lives. And despite the problems that we were confronted with, and the more I consulted with my colleagues around the region, the more I asked my technical experts in the ministry, where are we going, what are we doing? There were limited answers. And then I read an article that showed that the Sargassum was affecting the western coast of Africa. And I said, oh, this ain't exactly a small problem. And being involved with the major issues of climate change, especially in 2015 leading up to Paris, the topical issues, the topical discussions of climate change led us to understand that the Sargassum problem is a direct result of the changes in our environment, the issues of global warming, the issues of rising sea level. And I further read an article that showed that the analysis of the particular seaweed that was in the Caribbean was probably emanating from all the way in Brazil. And that also raised some antennas. So these discussions have been far and wide, and to have the partnership that we have with Virgin Unite and and Sir Richard, who is by no means an ordinary environmentalist, we have arrived at this place today. But we've taken care to make sure that we include individuals from various sectors of the community. We've included scientists, academics, we've included business persons, and of course, we've included policymakers. Because coming out of the conference, I'd love to go back to my premier and say, when the Sargassum seaweed comes around again, here's the budget that you need to have, because these are the problems we anticipate. And I hope to go back to Sir Richard and say, Sir Richard, here are some of the solutions. How can we advance, converting these to business opportunities to ensure that the Sargassum is not only a nuisance, but it becomes a means of entrepreneurship and therefore a means of economic potential for individuals throughout the Caribbean. That's why we're here today, ladies and gentlemen. We're here to put our collective minds and our collective energies together to be able to deal with one of the pressing problems of the day. The environmental issues are not going to leave us. Coming out of Paris, you know, in my sojourn in Paris for the COP, the one thing that was very real around the conference center, everybody understood there was no plan B. It was a subtle message that ran through the entire conference. There is no plan B. We either get it right or we are finished with. And so when we finish these 2 days, we hope to have some concrete ideas that will lead to solutions to deal with one of the pressing issues of the day, the Sargassum seaweed. I want to extend, like the governor before me, like the premier, like Sir Richard, a warm welcome to all of you for taking the time out to come to the BVI. God bless you. God continue to bless these islands.
I'm absolutely delighted and deeply grateful to join with the British Virgin Islands government, with Virgin Unite, OECS representatives, and the FCO's partner, the Caribbean Council, to discuss how to turn the Sargassum challenge faced by the region into an opportunity. The Economist's headline on Sargassum was slightly dramatically, "Plaguing Paradise." And we only have to look around us here today to say that this is indeed paradise, or as close as we'll get to it on this earth. But I'm very hopeful that collectively we can contribute during this conference to turning the so-called plague into an opportunity for the region. And I'm particularly pleased, as the Deputy Premier just said, that there's a particular focus on commercial applications, on harnessing the entrepreneurial spirit that I myself have seen is so prevalent throughout the Caribbean, to finding real solutions that are an opportunity for the whole region. When David Cameron came to the Caribbean in September last year, he made clear that the UK's commitment to the region is more important than ever. The UK and the Caribbean share a historic bond and friendship, which I know is important to all of us here in this room. Our shared principles and values, democracy, the rule of law, free speech, and respect for human rights, bind us all together as we work hand in hand on our common goals. During his visit, the Prime Minister announced a £360 million financial commitment for the Caribbean, including the UK Caribbean Infrastructure Partnership Fund, which involves the provision of £300 million in grant finance to ODA-eligible countries and territories. And this quadruples the UK's development programme in the region, making the UK the Caribbean's largest bilateral donor. It will support projects such as the construction of roads, bridges, renewable energy facilities, port upgrades, and sea defences, and hopefully work with you to improve resilience to climate change. Our support for this conference is another example of the UK's absolute commitment to partnering with the Caribbean. And by bringing together regional, British, and other international experts here over these 2 days to share scientific and commercial best practice, I'm confident we'll all move closer to understanding this phenomenon and how best to make the most of the economic possibilities it may represent. So these 2 days are an excellent and important step forward, and our work here together is the beginning of the next exciting stage. The UK remains absolutely committed to partnering with you all over the coming months to build on the outcomes which I know will flow from this conference. And I wish us all every success together.
I bring you warm greetings from the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, the Secretary General, Dr. Didicus Jules, and also my colleagues. It's a great pleasure for us to be here and to partner with all these incredible partners, but also to acknowledge the leadership by one of our member states, the British Virgin Islands, in shaping this conference today. Sargassum is an issue for all of us. It's not only in the Eastern Caribbean states, it's just not only in the wider Caribbean, but we've learned it's also touching the African continent. And over 2 years, over last year, we at the OECS have tried to shape a partnership for us to deal with this. And under the leadership of the Ocean Governance Unit, we have been doing this in a very collective manner. And we're hoping that today will also propel us to even strengthen that partnership. One of the things that we need to recognize that sargassum is really a problem when it hits onto our beaches and it takes away the tourists coming to our shores. But sargassum also plays a very critical role in the ecosystems of the marine environment. It occupies some of the least productive seas in the world, and therefore we must recognize it. Also, it's an habitat for many species which we rely on. So while we look at sargassum, and it's quite understandable that it's now hitting our shores in tons and magnitude that we have never recognized before, we must also step outside of this to look at the importance. And I am hoping that in the next 2 days that we can all roll our sleeves up and to find collective solutions. We must recognize the importance, but also turn those challenges that we have of where we have sargassum on our seashores and not look at it as a problem, but rather at smart solutions. Smart solutions for management, smart solutions for research, and collectively we all have a role to play. And I can assure you that the OECS Commission, especially the Ocean Governance Unit, is very committed to shape a governance modality that allows us to explore those options collectively within the OECS, but also to be a pilot beyond that into looking at this problem and finding global solutions. So I personally look forward to join the discussion, to share my expertise and my thoughts as to how do we move forward beyond this. I want to acknowledge the front table, which I haven't done. Sir Richard Branson, you do have a beautiful island, and thank you for your hospitality. Governor, Premier, and also Dr. Pickering, whom I have been liaising with, and also my colleagues. I certainly look forward for the next 2 days, and the OECS Commission is committed to providing any solution and support that we need to propel this beyond here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Singh. And what now remains is for me to acknowledge and thank those in the background and the reaches, perhaps that are not always seen, that made this day possible, as well as this opening ceremony. First of all, I would like to acknowledge and thank the Premier's Office, as well as the International Affairs Secretariat, the Ministry of Natural Resources and Labor, the Deputy Governor's Office, the Royal Virgin Islands Police Force, the Government Information Services, Desktop Publishing for H. Labadie Stout Community College, Mosquito Island Guest Services, the members of the media, and our partners who have made this day as well possible, Virgin Unite, Foreign and Commonwealth Office, Caribbean Council, and OECS. Thank you.